Good evening, and welcome to our Wednesday night worship and meditation. A very simple service this evening. I'd like to read with you and to you some passages from a book by Bishop Desmond Tutu, God Has a Dream. The bishop reminds us that Jesus came proclaiming the kingdom of God. And he called his disciples as partners to follow him in the way of that kingdom. Because, says the bishop, God has a dream. God has a dream for the world that he created and loves. And we are God's partners in that dream. Listen. The bishop writes, God is transfiguring the world. If God is transfiguring the world, you may ask, why does he need our help? The answer is quite simple. We are the agents of transformation that God uses to transfigure his world. In the Bible, when God wanted the children of Israel to be freed from bondage in Egypt, he could have done it on his own. But he wanted a human partner. We often forget that the patriarchs and matriarchs were flesh and blood humans, but the Bible reminds us of this repeatedly. These people, with all their flaws, were able to be God's heroic partners. So God went to Moses and said something along these lines. Hi, Moses. Hi, God. Moses, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. Moses was thoroughly flabbergasted. What? Me? What have I done now? Go to Pharaoh? Please, God, no, you can't be serious. Forgetting that God knew everything, Moses pleaded, God, you know I stammer. How can I address Pharaoh? Mercifully, God did not accept Moses' first negative reactions. If he had, the children of Israel would still be in Egypt in bondage. The God we worship is the Exodus God, the great liberator God who leads us out of all kinds of bondage. Do you remember what God told Moses? He said, I have seen the suffering of my people. I have heard their cry. I know their suffering and am come down to deliver them. Our God is a God who knows. Our God is a God who sees. Our God is a God who hears. Our God is a God who comes down to deliver. But the way that God delivers us is by using us as his partners, by calling on Moses and on you and me. But we are not alone. God does not abandon us in our moments of need. Do you remember the wonderful story in the book of Daniel about the time God's people were being persecuted by the king, who expected them to bow down before a graven image? The king set up a golden statue and said that anyone who refused to worship it was going to become a Kentucky Fried Chicken, because he was going to be thrown into the fiery furnace. Now Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to obey the royal decree. The king called the three and tried to be nice to them. I know there are people who mislead you. You will worship the image. They said, what? No, man. So the king said, do you know who I am? I am the king here. I am in charge. We are going to stoke up the fire 7 times hotter than it ever was because you don't listen to me. The story says the fire was so hot it burned to death the soldiers who carried the 3 to the furnace. But as the king looked into the fire, thinking they would be burnt to a crisp, he could not believe his eyes. For they were walking in the fire. No, there were not 3. There was a 4th with them. And the king looked and said, there's a 4th who looks like a god. The God we worship doesn't tell his people to wear fireproof suits before going into the furnace. He goes right in there with them. A story from the Holocaust makes a similar point. A Nazi guard was taunting his Jewish prisoner, who had been given the filthiest job, cleaning the toilets. The guard was standing above him, looking down at him, and said, "Where is your God now?" The prisoner replied, "Right here with me, in the muck." And the tremendous thing that has come to me more and more is this recognition of God as Emmanuel, God with us, who does not give good advice from the sidelines. The God who is there with us in the muck. God does not take our suffering away, but he bears it with us and strengthens us to bear it. At times of despair, we must learn to see with new eyes, like the prophet Elisha. The Bible tells us that Elisha and his servant were surrounded by a host of enemies, but the prophet remained strangely calm and somewhat unconcerned while his servant grew ever more agitated. The prophet asked God to open the servant's eyes, and the servant then saw that those who were on their side were many times more than those against them. This is not just an old story. This is a way to see that you are not alone in your struggle for justice. There are many of you who are working to feed the orphan and the widow. There are many who are working to beat swords into plowshares. There is hope that nightmares will end, hope that seemingly intractable problems will find solutions. God has some tremendous fellow workers, some outstanding partners. Each of us has a capacity for great evil, but also for great good. And that is what convinces God that it was worth the risk of creating us. It is awesome that God, the omnipotent one, depends on us fragile and vulnerable creatures to accomplish God's will and to bring justice and healing and wholeness. God has no one but us. As the great African Saint Augustine of Hippo put it, God without us will not, as we without God cannot. I have often told the story of the rustic priest in Russia who was accosted by a brash young physicist who had rehearsed all the reasons for atheism and arrogantly concluded, "Therefore, I do not believe in God." The little priest, not put off at all, replied quietly, "Oh, it doesn't matter. God believes in you." God does believe in us. God relies on us to help make this world all that God has dreamed of it being. How will we do it? We will walk by faith, even when we cannot see. We close this evening's meditation as we listen to Mark Claremont remind us and inspire us in song.
Would I believe you when you say your hand will guide my every way? Will I receive the words you say every moment of every day? Well, I will walk by faith, even when I cannot see. Well, because this broken road prepares your way for me. Help me to win my endless fears. You've been so faithful for all my years. With one breath you make me new. Your grace covers all I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, but I still see your face. Well, you've spoken, pouring your words of praise. Well, I will walk by faith, even when I cannot see, because this broken road prepares your will for me. Well, I will walk by faith, even when I cannot see, because this broken road prepares your way for me. I will walk by faith. 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 Yes, I will. I want Jesus to walk with me.